achieving everything you want in life. There are a few principles, a few secrets, if you will, that make the biggest difference. The first secret is the foundation of it all. You must decide what you really want. I can't emphasize this enough. It sounds simple, doesn't it? But let me tell you, most people never truly decide. They think about what they might like. They daydream about some vague notion of success. But they never sit down and make a concrete decision. Why is this so important? Because making a decision sets everything else in motion. It's like the rudder on a ship. Without it, you drift. But with it, you steer your course. And that's when the power of direction takes over. You see, when you decide on a goal, when you clearly define what it is you want, something changes. Your brain, your energy, your very actions begin to align with that decision. Until you do that, you're like a ship without a rudder, tossed by the waves of life, without a destination in sight. Now you might ask, Jim, how do I decide? Well, let me tell you how I've seen it work in my life, and in the lives of countless others. You've got to get clear on what truly matters to you. And this is where many people stumble. They say they want success, but success means different things to different people. Do you want wealth? Do you want health? Do you want better relationships? Do you want spiritual fulfillment? These are all different kinds of success. And until you decide which one matters most to you, you'll never really have direction. One thing you can do is sit down with a piece of paper and start writing. Write down everything you want in life. Don't hold back. Let your imagination run wild. Think about where you want to live, the kind of car you want to drive, the career you want to pursue, the relationships you want to have. But here's the key. After you've written down everything, go back and narrow it down to what truly matters. Ask yourself, what's the most important thing here? Because if you're not clear on what you truly want, you'll find yourself chasing too many things at once. Let me give you an example from my own life. When I was a young man, I was broke. I was 25 years old, had nothing in the bank, creditors were calling, and I was living on crumbs. But that wasn't the worst part. The worst part was I didn't know what I wanted. I was going through the motions, living day to day without a clear sense of direction. And then I met a man named Mr. Schoaf. Mr. Schoaf was a mentor to me. And one of the first things he said was, Jim, you've got to decide what you want. At first, I didn't understand the power of what he was telling me. But then I started to realize, until I knew exactly what I wanted, I was never going to make any progress. Mr. Schoaf encouraged me to get serious about my life, to make decisions about where I was going and what I wanted to achieve. I sat down one evening and I started to write down my goals. At first, they were big, abstract things like, I want to be successful. But Mr. Schoaf made me see that wasn't enough. I needed to be specific. So I got serious. I decided I wanted to make a certain amount of money. I decided I wanted to be able to travel the world. And I decided I wanted to become a person of influence, someone who could teach and inspire others. Once I made those decisions, things started to change. Now, don't misunderstand me. Making the decision doesn't mean the universe is suddenly going to deliver everything to you on a silver platter. No. What it does is give you a target. And when you have a target, you can start to focus. Focus is power. A laser beam is just focused light. but it can cut through steel. That's the kind of power you unleash when you make a decision, and focus on it with all your energy. There was a man who wanted to be a world-class archer. He had the best bow and arrow. He had all the right gear, and he was practicing every day, but he couldn't seem to hit the target consistently. He became frustrated and went to his coach for advice. The coach asked him one simple question: "Where are you aiming?" The man realized he hadn't been aiming at all. He was just pulling the bowstring and hoping for the best. The lesson is clear. You've got to know where you're aiming if you want to hit the target. So, what's your target? Have you truly decided what you want? I encourage you to take some time and think about it. Really think about it. This is the first secret, because without it, the rest of the process won't work. Until you make a clear decision about what you want in life, you're just wandering. And there's nothing more disheartening than wandering without purpose. Once you've made that decision, though, watch what happens. It's like a switch flips inside you. Your mind becomes engaged. Your actions become purposeful. And the universe itself seems to conspire to help you achieve your goal. But it all starts with that decision. Mr. Schaaf taught me this, and it changed my life. I went from being broke and unsure of myself to becoming a millionaire and living the kind of life I had only dreamed of. And it wasn't because I got lucky. It was because I made a decision, and I stuck to it. That's the power of deciding. So that's the first secret. Decide what you want. Cut off all other possibilities. Burn the ships. And commit yourself fully to that decision. When you do that, you'll find that everything else starts to fall into place. It's like the pieces of a puzzle coming together. But it all starts with that one decision. So decide. Decide right now what you want your life to look like. And make that decision with the full force of your heart and mind. Because once you've done that, you're already halfway there. Next, you've got to take massive action. You see, once you've made a decision, it's not enough to just sit back and wait for things to happen. You've got to roll up your sleeves and get to work. And not just any work. Massive, focused, and intentional action. This is where the magic happens. You know, a lot of people make decisions, and they're fired up in the beginning. They get excited about their goals. They feel motivated. But then something happens. The excitement fades. The initial burst of energy starts to wane, and they stop taking action. Maybe they take a few steps, and when they don't see immediate results, they lose momentum. They start to doubt whether it's really possible. But here's the truth. Achieving anything worthwhile in life requires massive action, sustained over time. When I first started in business, I didn't know much. I was just a farm boy from Idaho with big dreams. But I knew that if I wanted to change my life, I had to do something different. I couldn't just sit around waiting for an opportunity to fall into my lap. I had to create my own opportunities. So I made a decision. I decided I was going to become successful in business, no matter what it took. And once I made that decision, I got to work. I started reading every book I could get my hands on about business and success. I attended seminars, I sought out mentors, and I started taking action. And let me tell you, it wasn't easy. In the beginning, I faced rejection after rejection. I knocked on doors, made phone calls, and I heard a lot of no's. But I didn't let that stop me. I kept taking action. I kept knocking on those doors. And eventually, the tide began to turn. You see, the more action you take, the more momentum you build. It's like pushing a snowball down a hill. At first, it's small and requires effort to get it moving. But once it starts rolling, it gets bigger and bigger. And soon, it's unstoppable. Now, some people ask, Jim, what kind of action should I take? And that's a great question. The answer is, you've got to take the kind of action that's aligned with your goals. You see, not all action is created equal. Busy work is not the same as productive work. Some people stay busy all day, but they're not getting any closer to their goals because the actions they're taking aren't moving the needle. They're running on a treadmill, expending energy but not getting anywhere. So, what you need is massive action that's focused. It's got to be the kind of action that directly contributes to the achievement of your goals. If your goal is to build a successful business, then your action needs to be focused on growing that business. If your goal is to get in the best shape of your life, your action needs to be focused on your fitness and nutrition. Whatever your goal is, your actions must be in alignment with it. So what does massive action look like? It's about going above and beyond what most people are willing to do. It's about being relentless in your pursuit. Most people will take action until it gets uncomfortable, and then they'll stop. But if you want to achieve great things, you've got to push through that discomfort. You've got to be willing to do the things that other people aren't willing to do. Look at the best athletes. The ones at the top of their game don't just practice when they feel like it. They don't just show up when it's convenient. They practice day in and day out. Rain or shine, whether they feel like it or not. They're constantly pushing themselves to improve, to get better, to be the best. And that's the kind of action you need to take if you want to achieve your goals. It reminds me of a quote by Albert Einstein. Nothing happens until something moves. Isn't that powerful? It's a simple statement, but it carries so much truth. You can have all the dreams, all the plans, all the visions in the world, but nothing happens until you take action. And not just a little bit of action, massive action. Now, I want you to think about your goals for a moment. What is it that you truly want? Maybe it's financial freedom. Maybe it's better health. Maybe it's stronger relationships. Whatever it is, ask yourself this. What massive action can I take today that will move me closer to that goal? And here's the key. Don't just think about it. Do it. Because thinking about action is not the same as taking action. Some people get stuck in what I call analysis paralysis. They spend so much time analyzing, planning, and thinking that they never actually get started. They want to have everything figured out before they take the first step. But here's the thing. You'll never have all the answers. The path to success is not a straight line. There will be twists and turns. There will be unexpected obstacles. But you can't let that stop you from taking the first step. Just start. Take action. Even if you don't have it all figured out yet, just start. The path will become clearer as you move forward. Here's another key point to taking action. Persistence. Because massive action is not just about intensity. It's also about consistency. You can't take massive action for a day or a week and then stop. You've got to keep going. You've got to be relentless. I've seen so many people get excited about their goals. They start taking action, but then they hit a roadblock and they quit. They give up too soon. They don't realize that success is often just around the corner. It reminds me of the story of the gold miners during the California gold rush. There was one man who had been digging for months and months with no success. Finally, frustrated and discouraged, he gave up and sold his equipment to another miner. The new miner came in and started digging right where the first man left off. And do you know what happened? He struck gold just 3 feet away from where the first man had stopped. 3 feet. The lesson here is that you've got to keep going. You never know how close you are to a breakthrough. So, here's what I want you to remember about massive action. It's not just about doing more. It's about doing the right things consistently over time. It's about showing up day after day, even when you don't feel like it. It's about pushing through the challenges, the obstacles, and the setbacks, because that's where the real growth happens. And when you combine massive action with persistence, that's when you become unstoppable. What action are you going to take today that will move you closer to your goal? Not tomorrow, not next week, but today. Because here's the truth. The only moment we have is right now. And if you want to achieve everything you've ever dreamed of, it starts with taking action right here, right now. So that's the second secret. Take massive action. Don't wait for the perfect time, because there's no such thing. The perfect time is now. And when you take action, you build momentum. And momentum, my friends, is a powerful force. It will carry you forward. It will give you the strength to keep going. And before you know it, you'll be well on your way to achieving everything you want in life. Next, surround yourself with the right people. This one is crucial, my friends. You see, we don't live in isolation. Our success, our failure, our thinking, and even our habits are influenced by the people we spend the most time with. It's a simple but powerful truth. Your environment shapes you. And the people in your environment are a big part of that. Think about it for a moment. Who are the people you talk to every day? Who are you sharing your ideas with? Who are you getting feedback from? Who are you letting influence your thinking? Because whether you realize it or not, these people are either helping you move forward toward your goals or holding you back. You become like the people you spend the most time with. It's inevitable. If you're around people who are constantly negative, who are always complaining, who don't believe in themselves, that energy is going to rub off on you. On the other hand, if you surround yourself with people who are positive, who are focused, who are driven, that energy will lift you up. You see, there's something called the law of association, and it's one of the most powerful forces in your life. Mr. Schoaf, my mentor, taught me this early on. He said, "Jim, if you want to fly like an eagle, you've got to stop hanging out with the turkeys." Now, he didn't mean that in a disrespectful way. But what he was saying is that if you want to achieve great things, you've got to associate with people who are also on a path to greatness. When I was starting out, I was surrounded by people who didn't have big dreams. They were good folks, don't get me wrong. But they weren't ambitious. They were content with just getting by, living paycheck to paycheck. And they didn't see the point in reaching for more. I was starting to feel the same way. After all, if everyone around you is thinking small, it's easy to start thinking small yourself. But then I met Mr. Schoaf, and he was different. He had big dreams. He had a vision for his life. And most importantly, he believed in the possibility of more. Just being around him made me realize that I was capable of achieving much more than I had ever thought possible. That's the power of association. When you're around people who are constantly striving for more, who are always looking for ways to improve themselves, who believe in growth and potential, it inspires you to do the same. It elevates your thinking. It stretches you. But here's the thing. This isn't always easy. Sometimes the people you've been hanging out with, your friends, your family, your colleagues, aren't on the same path as you. They might not understand your goals. They might even discourage you. And that's tough. I get it. It's not easy to distance yourself from people who have been a part of your life for a long time. But you've got to make a choice. Do you want to stay where you are? Or do you want to grow? Because growth often requires change. And that includes changing the people you associate with. Now, I'm not saying you've got to cut people out of your life completely, but I am saying you need to be selective about who you spend the most time with. If you want to achieve greatness, you've got to spend time with people who are going places, people who are already where you want to be, or at least on the same journey. You've got to find mentors. Find peers who are hungry for success. Find people who challenge you to be better. I want to ask you to take a moment and think about the 5 people you spend the most time with. Do their lives reflect the kind of life you want to have? Do their attitudes, their habits, their mindset align with your goals? If not, it's time to start making some changes. It might be uncomfortable at first, but I promise you, it's necessary. There was a young man I knew who had big dreams of becoming a successful entrepreneur. But all of his friends were content with working regular jobs and living for the weekend. They didn't have the same drive he had. They weren't interested in self-improvement. They weren't setting goals. And they certainly weren't pushing him to reach his potential. In fact, whenever he talked about his dreams, they would laugh and tell him he was crazy. Now, at first, he didn't think much of it. He thought he could pursue his dreams while still hanging out with the same crowd. But over time, their negativity started to affect him. He started to doubt himself. He started to think maybe they were right. Maybe he was crazy for wanting more. It wasn't until he made the decision to start spending time with a different group of people that things began to change for him. He found a mentor. Someone who had already achieved the kind of success he wanted. He joined a group of entrepreneurs who were on the same path as him. And suddenly everything shifted. He was surrounded by people who believed in him, who pushed him, who challenged him to be better. And that's when his business started to take off. You see, we are social creatures. We are influenced by the people around us, whether we realize it or not. If you're constantly around people who are telling you what you can't do, you'll start to believe it. But if you're around people who are telling you what you can do, who are encouraging you to reach higher, who are showing you what's possible, you'll start to believe that too. Here's the key. You've got to be intentional about who you let into your life. It's not just about finding people who are successful. It's about finding people who have the right mindset. People who are positive, who are growth-oriented, who are always striving to improve themselves. Because success isn't just about money or status. It's about growth. It's about becoming the best version of yourself. And you need people around you who are on that same journey. If you don't have those kinds of people in your life right now, I want to encourage you to seek them out. Find a mentor. Join a mastermind group. Attend seminars. Read books. Listen to podcasts. There are so many ways to connect with people who can elevate your thinking and push you to reach your full potential. And once you start surrounding yourself with the right people, you'll notice a dramatic shift in your life. Now, here's a little exercise you can do. Write down the names of the 5 people you spend the most time with. Next to each name, write down whether they are lifting you up or holding you back. Are they encouraging your growth, or are they keeping you in your comfort zone? Be honest with yourself. This exercise can be eye-opening. And once you've done it, you'll have a clear picture of who you need to spend more time with and who you might need to distance yourself from. Remember, you are the average of the 5 people you spend the most time with. So, choose wisely. Your future, your success, your growth depends on it. That's the 3rd secret. Surround yourself with the right people. When you do, you'll find that your energy, your focus, and your results will go to a whole new level. Next, develop the right mindset. This is where the inner game comes into play. Because everything starts in the mind. The thoughts you think, the beliefs you hold, the way you perceive the world around you. These things determine the course of your life more than anything else. It's not just about what you do. It's about how you think while you're doing it. You've probably heard the saying, "As a man thinketh in his heart, so is he." It's an ancient piece of wisdom, and it's still true today. What goes on in your mind will eventually show up in your life. Your outer world is simply a reflection of your inner world. So if you want to change your life, you've got to start by changing your thinking. Now, here's something I want you to understand. There are 2 kinds of mindsets. There's a fixed mindset, and there's a growth mindset. People with a fixed mindset believe that their abilities, their intelligence, their talents are set in stone. They think, I'm either good at something or I'm not. I'm either smart or I'm not. These people don't like challenges because they're afraid of failing. They think failure means they're not good enough. So they avoid it at all costs. They don't stretch themselves. They don't take risks. And as a result, they don't grow. On the other hand, people with a growth mindset believe that they can improve. They believe that their abilities can be developed through effort, learning, and perseverance. These people embrace challenges because they see them as opportunities to grow. They don't fear failure because they know failure is just a stepping stone on the path to success. They understand that every mistake they make is a chance to learn, to get better, to grow stronger. So let me ask you, which mindset do you have? Are you operating with a fixed mindset? Or do you have a growth mindset? This is critical because the mindset you adopt will shape the way you approach every challenge, every goal, every setback in your life. Now, if you find that you've been living with a fixed mindset, don't worry. The good news is you can change it. You can shift your thinking from fixed to growth. And when you do, everything will start to change for the better. But it takes awareness. It takes practice. And it takes effort. One of the most important shifts you can make is to stop thinking in terms of limitations and start thinking in terms of possibilities. People with a fixed mindset are always focused on what they can't do. They say things like, I'm not good at math, or I'm not cut out to be an entrepreneur, or I'll never be able to lose weight. These are limiting beliefs, and they keep people stuck. But people with a growth mindset are focused on what they can do. They say things like, I may not be good at math right now, but I can learn. Or I might not have all the skills to start a business, but I can develop them. Or I might not be in the best shape right now, but I can get there. That's the kind of thinking that leads to success. When you start believing that you can grow, that you can improve, that you can become more than you are today, you open up a world of possibilities. Suddenly, challenges don't seem so daunting anymore. Instead of seeing obstacles, you start seeing opportunities. When I was 25 years old, I was broke, frustrated, and directionless. I didn't have much going for me, but what I did have was a desire to change my life. I wanted more, but I wasn't sure how to get it. That's when I met my mentor, Mr. Schoaf. And he began to teach me about the power of mindset. One of the first things Mr. Schoaf taught me was to stop thinking like a victim. He said, Jim, if you want to change your life, you've got to stop blaming other people for your circumstances. You've got to stop blaming the economy. Stop blaming your upbringing. Stop blaming your past. You are where you are because of the choices you've made. That hit me like a ton of bricks because up until that point, I had been blaming everything outside of myself for my situation. I was blaming the government. I was blaming my lack of education. I was blaming my background. But Mr. Schoaf made me realize that none of that mattered as much as I thought it did. What mattered was my mindset and my choices. That was a turning point for me. I began to take responsibility for my life. I started to adopt a growth mindset. Instead of seeing myself as a victim of circumstances, I started to see myself as the creator of my circumstances. I began to believe that I could change, that I could grow, that I could learn. And that belief changed everything. Now, I want to share something powerful with you. The words you speak to yourself matter. The way you talk to yourself shapes your mindset. If you're constantly telling yourself that you're not good enough, that you're not smart enough, that you're not capable, guess what? You're going to start believing it. And when you believe it, you act in accordance with that belief. But if you start telling yourself a different story, if you start speaking words of possibility, of growth, of potential, you'll begin to believe that too. And once you believe it, you'll start acting in accordance with that belief. One of the best things you can do to develop a growth mindset is to start paying attention to the language you use with yourself. Are you speaking words of limitation or words of possibility? Are you focusing on what you can't do? Or are you focusing on what you can do? Every time you catch yourself thinking or speaking in limiting terms, stop and reframe it. Turn that limitation into a possibility. For example, instead of saying, "I can't do this," say, "I haven't learned how to do this yet, but I can figure it out." Instead of saying, "I'm not good at this," say, "I'm getting better at this every day." This simple shift in language can have a profound impact on your mindset and ultimately on your results. Another key to developing the right mindset is to focus on solutions rather than problems. People with a fixed mindset tend to get stuck in problems. They focus all their energy on what's going wrong. And as a result, they feel overwhelmed and paralyzed. But people with a growth mindset focus on solutions. They acknowledge the problem, but they don't dwell on it. Instead, they immediately start looking for ways to solve it. Let me tell you, life is full of problems. That's just the nature of life. But the difference between those who achieve their goals and those who don't is how they respond to those problems. Do you let them stop you? Or do you use them as opportunities to grow and learn? When I was building my business, I encountered countless problems. There were days when everything seemed to go wrong. But instead of letting those problems derail me, I focused on finding solutions. I asked myself, what can I learn from this? How can I get better from this experience? What's the opportunity here? And that mindset, that focus on solutions, allowed me to keep moving forward, even in the face of challenges. You see, your mindset is your greatest asset. It's what determines how you respond to life's inevitable ups and downs. It's what determines whether you give up at the first sign of trouble, or whether you keep pushing forward until you achieve your goals. And the best part is, you have the power to choose your mindset. You have the power to cultivate a growth mindset that will support you on your journey to success. So, here's what I want you to do. Commit to developing a growth mindset. Start by paying attention to your thoughts, your self-talk, and your focus. Whenever you catch yourself thinking in limiting terms, stop and reframe it. Whenever you encounter a problem, focus on finding a solution. And remember, growth is a process. You're not going to change your mindset overnight. But with consistent effort, you can develop the kind of mindset that will help you achieve everything you want in life. That's the fourth secret. Develop the right mindset. Because when you change your mind, you change your life. Next, the fifth secret to improve yourself mentally and physically. Consistency. This is the glue that holds everything together. You see, without consistency, even the best intentions, the clearest goals, the most massive actions, the greatest associations, and the right mindset won't lead to lasting success. Consistency is what separates the dreamers from the achievers, the starters from the finishers, and those who want success from those who actually achieve it. Now, I want you to think about this for a moment. How many times have you set a goal, got excited about it, started strong, but then after a few weeks or months, that excitement faded? How many times have you decided you were going to make a change in your life, only to fall back into your old habits after a short time? This happens to all of us at some point. We start out with great enthusiasm, but without consistency, we can't maintain the momentum. Let me tell you something I learned early in my career. Success doesn't come from what you do occasionally. It comes from what you do consistently. It's not about taking massive action one day and then resting on your laurels for the next week. It's about showing up day after day, even when you don't feel like it, even when the excitement has worn off, even when things aren't going your way. Consistency is about habits. You see, habits are the building blocks of success. If you develop good habits and you stick to them consistently, they will compound over time and lead to extraordinary results. But if you have bad habits, or if you don't maintain consistency, those same small negative actions will also compound and pull you further away from your goals. Imagine you want to get in shape. You set a goal to work out every day. And for the first few days, you're full of energy. You hit the gym, you follow your diet, and you feel great. But then life gets busy. Maybe you miss one workout, and then another. Before you know it, you've stopped going to the gym altogether, and your goal slips further away. Why? Because you didn't maintain consistency. Now imagine if instead you stayed consistent. Even if you didn't have time for a long workout every day, you still made time for something. Even if it was just a short run or a few minutes of stretching, you stayed consistent. Over time, those small, consistent efforts would add up, and you would see results. It's the same with any goal, whether it's financial, personal, or professional. Success is not about giant leaps. It's about small steps taken every single day. It's about the little things you do consistently that, over time, create a big impact. That's the power of consistency. Now, one of the reasons people struggle with consistency is because they expect immediate results. We live in a world where people want instant gratification. They want to lose 10 pounds in a week. They want to make $1 million overnight. They want to master a skill in a few days. But real success doesn't work that way. Real success takes time, effort, and, you guessed it, consistency. I've seen this time and time again in my own life. When I first started in business, I was working long hours, making calls, knocking on doors, trying to get things off the ground. And let me tell you, in the beginning, it didn't feel like I was making any progress. I would go weeks, sometimes months, without seeing any significant results. But I didn't give up. I kept showing up. I kept taking action. And eventually, the results started to come. But it wasn't because I did something extraordinary one time. It was because I did the ordinary things consistently, day in and day out. Consistency requires patience. It requires discipline. It requires the ability to stick with something long enough to see it through. Most people give up right before the breakthrough. They get discouraged because they're not seeing results fast enough. So they quit. But here's what you need to understand. Consistency is not about immediate results. It's about long-term results. It's about doing the right things over and over again, trusting that the results will come in time. There's a concept I like to call the slight edge. It's the idea that small, seemingly insignificant actions, when done consistently over time, create massive results. Think about it like this. If you read just 10 pages of a good book every day, in 1 year, you will have read 3,650 pages. That's the equivalent of 12 to 15 books. But if you read nothing, what happens? You stay exactly where you are. The slight edge works in both directions. Positive actions, compounded over time, lead to success. Negative actions, compounded over time, lead to failure. There was a young man who wanted to learn to play the piano. He was excited at first and practiced for hours every day. But after a few weeks, he started to lose motivation because he wasn't progressing as quickly as he had hoped. He considered giving up, but his piano teacher gave him some powerful advice. Don't worry about practicing for hours. Just commit to practicing for 15 minutes every day. And don't miss a day. The young man took this advice to heart. He practiced for just 15 minutes every day, no matter how busy he was, no matter how he felt. And guess what? After a year, he had made incredible progress. He wasn't a concert pianist yet, but he was far better than when he started. All because of the power of consistency. So, how do you build consistency? First, you need to create habits. Habits are powerful because they automate behavior. Once something becomes a habit, you no longer have to rely on willpower or motivation to do it. You just do it automatically. That's why creating good habits is one of the most important things you can do for your success. Start small. Don't try to overhaul your entire life overnight. Pick one area where you want to improve and start building a habit in that area. If your goal is to get in shape, start by committing to just 10 minutes of exercise every day. If your goal is to improve your finances, start by saving just a small amount of money each week. If your goal is to develop your mind, start by reading just 10 pages of a book every day. The key is to start small and be consistent. Over time, these small habits will become second nature, and you'll start to see the results. Another key to building consistency is tracking your progress. Keep a journal. Use a habit tracker. Or find some way to measure your consistency. There's something powerful about seeing your progress in black and white. It keeps you accountable and motivated to keep going. Finally, find ways to stay motivated over the long term. You won't always feel like showing up. You won't always feel like taking action. But that's when consistency matters the most, when you don't feel like it. Find ways to remind yourself of why you started in the first place. Surround yourself with positive influences. Read inspiring books. Listen to motivational speakers. And keep your goals in front of you at all times. In the early days of my career, I wasn't always motivated to make phone calls and knock on doors. But I had a clear vision of where I wanted to go. I knew what I was working toward. So on the days when I didn't feel like taking action, I reminded myself of my goals. I reminded myself of why I started. And that kept me going. That's why it's so important to have a strong why behind your goals. When you know why you're doing something, it's easier to stay consistent, even when the motivation isn't there. So, here's the fifth secret. Consistency. It's about showing up every day, doing the small things consistently over time, and trusting that the results will come. Success isn't about one big heroic effort. It's about the small daily actions that add up to big results over time. Remember, it's not what you do once in a while that counts. It's what you do consistently. And when you master the art of consistency, there's no limit to what you can achieve. This is the final piece of the puzzle, my friends. When you combine a clear decision, massive action, the right people, a growth mindset, and consistency, You create a powerful formula for success. You can achieve anything you want in life, but it starts with these 5 secrets. Now it's up to you to take this knowledge and apply it. So take what you've learned here, put it into practice, and watch your life transform.